All right, so welcome to Money Mastery. This is class number 2. Okay, class number 2. Okay, so up to this point, hopefully you have started and hopefully even completed doing the ledger work and starting to set up your budget sheet. That doesn't mean that at this point you've made a budget, but at least you have the items that are to be in your budget sort of identified, and you have some sort of at least a sense of what you have up to this point been spending. Okay, and that's really part 1. Okay, so I do actually have, you know what, I might as well just hand these out. Why don't we hand these out? All right, this is kind of a curriculum. I may change it, but at least it gives you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to cover in the course. Of course, normally you would get this during class 1, not class 2. Probably more helpful than getting it at class 3 or 4. All right, so in step 1, so this is kind of the 7 steps that I'm going to be trying to hopefully address. So step 1 is to accurately identify the state of your finances. We call that the you are here sort of mall map moment thing, okay? And that's what you were doing for the last 2 weeks, hopefully, was getting a handle on, getting some clarity about where you are. Because before we make any adjustments, before we do anything to fix anything, we got to figure out exactly what the standing is currently. Okay, so the key here is the accuracy, all right? So, for example, when I used to do personal training, and I did the same thing from a food point of view, I used to tell somebody, without changing anything you do, I want you to write down everything you eat for a week, everything that goes in your mouth, whether you're drinking it or eating it. And then people would all of a sudden start thinking that I'm going to see it and they would eat differently. I said, no, don't do that. I need an accurate idea of what you're already doing. We'll make adjustments later, but I want to make adjustments in a certain manner and not just because you're afraid I might see what you're doing. Okay, so don't be afraid of anybody ever seeing this because you don't need to show it to anybody, but be as accurate as you can and don't under-exaggerate anything. If anything, over-exaggerate what you're spending and under-exaggerate what you're making, not the other way around. Because we are trying to fix, if there's a problem, the problem, and you can't fix it if you do not have an accurate idea of what the problem is, okay? So key is accuracy here. All right, so step 1 is accurately identifying. Then in step 2, we're going to make the necessary spending and income adjustments. I'm going to talk about that today because hopefully you should have accomplished a lot of step 1 already. Okay, making spending. So in other words, there's minimal probability that any of you are sitting here because your finances are doing what you want them to do. So we're going to assume that you have less money at the end of the month than you would like, okay? Or you have more month at the end of the money than you would like. All right, so with that assumption, that means that 2 things are necessary. A combination of them works best to fix the problem. Adjust what you're spending, and also, if you can, adjust what you're making. Okay, so because you can make more money, that helps the problem. But if you have all kinds of things that you're spending on that maybe you could fix because you don't need to be spending on them, that will also help the problem. Same thing I told you, I think, before about exercise. Exercise is very simply monitoring what goes in your mouth. Okay, that's one aspect of it. The other thing is moving your body more. Now you could do one or the other, they'll both help. But if you do them both, it helps a lot quicker, right? So in this case, we're going to look at your spending as well as your income. Okay, because some of you may need to do both. Cut back on some spending that's unnecessary and find ways to increase your income. Step 3, we're going to create an emergency fund. Now, we're going to do that somewhat first before we even eliminate debt and everything else, because as you're trying to eliminate debt, emergencies will come up and wreck your whole plan and you'll get discouraged and everything else. So let's try hard to get the emergency fund, the minimal $1,000 emergency fund as fast as possible. Most things that can come up that can kind of mess with your day, mess with your budget, etc., will be under $1,000. Okay, an appliance, a major appliance that breaks or needs to be replaced, it can be under $1,000. Okay, so things with your car often can be under $1,000. So $1,000 covers most, not all, but most likely events. Okay, so if you have that, it will keep our good friend Murphy at bay. If you don't know who Murphy is, there's a law that Murphy gave us called Murphy's Law that says, whatever can go wrong will. And when you don't have any money or you have a problem with your budget, Murphy takes room in one of your back rooms in your house and he moves in. The next thing you know, appliances are breaking, cars are breaking, everything's breaking. It's kind of like if you bring your umbrella, it won't rain. Okay, if you can fix your budget, Murphy tends to leave and doesn't come up quite as often. Not that there's any superstition to this. It's just one of those things that just feels like emotionally. Because what happens is, even though things happen just as often, but because you handle it, it doesn't register as emotionally. So it's not like it really does happen less often, it just doesn't bother you as much. Because it doesn't send your world into a tailspin. Okay, when you're like, oh no, such and such just broke, I don't know what I'm gonna do because I'm broke. Okay? So we'll try to get that emergency fund. Then we're gonna do a process to get rid of our debt. So we'll start eliminating the debt because these are the drains on your flow of income, okay? The things that you have to spend money on that you really don't need to be spending money on, like interest payments on credit cards and things like that, debt. Okay, debt service is certainly not a thing you want to be doing. So we want to eliminate the debt. Then step 5, we're going to plan for future large purchases and expenditures. These things are problematic only because we don't budget for them. A smart business, for example, is already putting money aside for all the equipment they know they're going to need to replace every 3 years, 5 years, or however often they expect generally for them to be needing to be replaced. So that when they need to replace it, they don't need to grab a bunch of money out of a budget place that they didn't have to put it aside already. They've already allocated funds for that over a period of time. So if you have a car that you know only has about 2 years left on it, you should be planning in advance for the car you're going to need to get in 2 years. And not freak out in 2 years that you don't know how you're going to afford to get a car. Does that make sense? Okay, same thing with any major appliance or a roof that might need to be replaced or fit, whatever it is, anything major that you know is coming up at some point in the relative near future, 3 to 5 years. Okay, relative near future, you should certainly be putting things aside for, okay? And so that's not until we did the emergency fund and debt elimination, okay? So let's make sure that we're doing those things first. So this is in order, a process that should be done in order, okay? Step 6, we'll talk about protecting your finances and assets. Of course, if you don't have any, then you don't have to worry about step 6. So that's why we don't do that until later in the process, okay? So after all, if you're gonna work this hard to get them all established and set in place, you should be thinking about how you can protect them, okay? And that even includes things like protecting them from you, because you may go and splurge them, spend them on something dumb down you see you have money put aside, all right? So you're gonna have to be able to work that out. And of course, the last thing would be retirement planning. A lot of you have not done any of that yet, and yet that's not something you need to be doing until you do the other 6 steps first. Okay, because your retirement has got no shot if you still have a budget that doesn't work, your spending is a problem, your income's a problem, emergencies are not able to be handled, et cetera, and you're under all kinds of debt. These are things that have to be handled first. Are we good on that? Everybody follow that plan? It's not a complicated plan, very simple. Accurate identification of where you are, then making adjustments in the income and the spending, emergency fund. Now, by the way, emergency fund, if you look at in the more detail, if you look at the next thing, so step 1 says accurately identify the state of your finances. You are here, create a ledger for the last 3 months of income and expenses, and then identify where you are financially. Step 2, make spending and income adjustments. So you're gonna identify spending and earning issues, discuss ways to address these things. We're gonna do that here today. And develop a plan to fix income, expense imbalances, and discuss how you use your budget. And then you'll implement your plan and you're gonna take massive action, okay? Step 3, creating an emergency fund. We'll start with $1,000 after. Now listen, the rest of this, phase 2 and phase 3, that doesn't happen until we've gotten past step 4. Okay, step 4 was begin the debt elimination. Get rid of the debt before we're gonna worry about 3 months expenses or 6 months expenses, okay? So phase 2 and phase 3, that stuff you do in step 6, all right? I didn't write that in the notes there, but I guess I realized I needed to explain that. The $1,000 emergency fund will be just fine until you get to step 6. And then we're talking about protecting yourself. It'd be great if you had 3 to 6 months expenses in the bank in case something adverse happened and you could not make money for a period of time. Okay? So we'll go to that. Okay, and then the rest of it is sort of self-explanatory. Now, throughout all the steps, the last point is very important. You're going to seek qualified counsel. Okay? And that would be somebody like me that you would be talking to. Do not get counsel from other broke people. They know how to do what? Be broke. Okay? So getting counsel from broke people is only going to give you counsel on how to be broke. Okay, so don't talk to other people that are struggling as you are and think that you're going to get a kind of answer. Now, you can talk to somebody that was where you are and figured out how to get out from where you are. Just like if you've got a weight problem, you find somebody that you know had a similar weight problem and they lost the weight and kept it off, you can say, how'd you do it? Okay? So I'm going to help you with this because I understand how this is done. I've been broke. I've been bankrupt. See, I've got those t-shirts. And I know how to get out of these things, okay? So in case you were wondering, well, Rabbi, do you even know anything? Listen, I've been exactly wherever you think you are. I've had more credit card debt than any of you probably have ever had. I've had over $100,000 in credit card debt. Okay? You've not been there, I probably, okay? And so I know what it's like to have a mountain of debt, okay? My monthly minimum payments were more than most of you probably make, all right? That's not a good place to be. That's not bragging. Okay, I'm not bragging on foolishness that I did in my life. I'm just letting you know I've been there and have an idea of what it's like to be where you are, okay? So don't look at me and say, well, you're not there now. Well, that's good. That means I know how to get from where you are to where I am now, okay? Because I made that journey, okay? And that's a good thing. Okay, so with the things that you've done up to this point, okay, we're going to talk now about spending and income adjustments and using your budget. Okay, we're now in the step 2 of this process, okay? So you should have a sheet that I gave you. You should have been able to either use the different categories I gave you or create your own and identify where your money has been going, all right? And that's some of it, I don't know, how many of you, when you did that, you came to realize that there was some places your money was going, you had no idea you were spending that kind of money in those areas? Do you have any of those moments? Okay. Nobody wants to raise their hand, but I got a couple of head nods. All right? Because that's kind of one of those wake-up calls that you get when you do this. She's like, wow, I had no idea I was spending that kind of money on this kind of stuff. Because sometimes it's these little things that you do all the time, and they're not expensive, but you do a lot of them a month. And you realize, wow, that's $200 a month I'm spending on coffee or whatever. And you had no idea. All right? So, what you want to do now, okay, we're going to take what you have there, and you're going to look at it, and you're going to say, okay, what are the needed things, and make sure that you are allocating your income funds towards the needed things first. That is housing, your normal utilities. By the way, if you look at your utilities, you might decide, I don't necessarily need the house to be 73 degrees. Maybe I could do better at 70 degrees or 68 and save a bunch of money on heat. In the summer, maybe I don't need it to be so cold. I can let it be a little warmer, whatever it is. This will save you some money in the budget, okay? But also in your accuracy exercise, figuring out where you are, you should also have a fairly accurate idea of what you're in the red for. In other words, how much negative you are in the month. Are you struggling by the amount of $200 a month? Are you struggling by $500 a month? Whatever that is, you need to find that money by either eliminating some spending or making more money, or some combination of the two. Or maybe that you have just enough and you're barely always sitting there with the water line just under your nose, about to drown, but you're not quite there yet. Well, then you got to figure out, okay, what can I do to move that down a little bit so I have a little bit of breathing room and I don't have all the stress that is connected with being just on the edge, okay? And so you'll want to make the efforts so that you can figure that out. So what you want to do then now is have a goal and say, how much more money do you want to end up with at the end of the month? Where do you need to, do you need to find an extra $50 a month in your budget? Or do you need to find an extra $200? Whatever that is, and then you now start looking for where you can take that money from. So how do you do that? Well, you have to prioritize. Start off with, what are you paying for rent? And even if you're paying rent, you may ask yourself, well, maybe I can move someplace if I needed to, that I could save a few hundred a month on rent, because maybe you can save 100 to 200 on rent. Maybe you don't want to go through that whole process, but you have to look at what you're paying. Electricity, again, you figure out, are you wasting any money in that area for your utilities? Food, big part of the budget is food. Can you be more efficient in your food spending? I don't mean at the expense of your nutrition, although I'm sure if we followed you around with your shopping cart, there's not always only nutritional things in it. Okay? For most of us, we have things that go in there that really don't need to be there. If you have children, the children sneak it in there. Somehow I was like, how did that end up in the cart? My children looking up at the ceiling, I don't know. Okay. All right, but these are things you have to spend money on. You need food, but you got to make sure are you spending appropriately on the food, okay? If you go through your house and you recognize that there's a bunch of stuff that you buy, because I know that we do this in my house, people buy stuff and then it never gets used and it gets thrown out. Stuff that has expiration dates on them. Okay, try to minimize that waste. Buy less of things, buy it more often. Okay, you don't need to buy 3 of something. I think at the most, it is good if it's something you use on a regular basis that you don't want to run out of, so have 2. Have one as a spare and the one you're using, and then when you go to the spare, buy another one. And always have one waiting, and that's it. That's all you need. You don't need 3 and 4 and 5 of anything. I know if you go to Sam's Club or Costco, you can get 20 of something. You don't need that. Or everything comes in a 3-pack or a 10-pack, okay? But if it is something that could be a problem, like shampoo or soap or something that really you don't want to run out of, fine, have an extra one. And when you go to the extra, buy one now to replace the extra one. That way you always have an extra one. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? But let's work on the spending part. That's not something that needs a whole lot of discussion. You need to deal with remember we talked about this in the first class, your psychological and emotional attachments to certain things, which is why you buy them and spend the way you do. This is going to be, the biggest part of your problem is above your shoulders, okay? It's the desires that you have either to purchase things or to not work like maybe you need to. I'm not calling anybody lazy, I'm just saying, maybe you get so comfortable with what you're doing, but what you're doing doesn't pay enough, that there's an emotional adjustment that would need to be taking you out of your comfort zone with what you do to go and do something different. Because now we're going to talk about the second half of this, which is you may need to make more money. And making more money can come one of 2 ways. Let's say you love what you're doing, but it just doesn't pay enough. And you really don't want to change what you're doing. Well, is there anything you can do in addition? Can you get a part-time thing to do? Because a part-time thing may be all you need to make up the extra $200 a month. That's not a lot of hours that you'd have to put in a part-time deal to make an extra $200, $100 a month, whatever it is that you're wanting. Now bear in mind, eventually you may think you want a lot more than that because you might want to think about putting away money for retirement and the other things that are closer to the step 6, step 7. And so, or maybe putting away money for large purchases. Well, that's got to be in your budget. And if you just barely have enough in your budget based on your spending and your income, you're never going to be able to put anything aside for these things. Okay? And so this is really important that we're starting to get this. Okay, so you're going to need to, and this is the hard part, you have to own, we talked about this in class 1, you have to own this. The hard part is you have to decide that you are going to own this problem and that you, not the ministry, not the government, not your friends and family, but you are going to fix the problem. Okay, you are going to spend less or more efficiently, and you are going to figure out how to earn more. Those are your only 2 options. Now, if you can really spend a whole lot less, you might not need to earn a whole lot more. If you really can earn a whole lot more, you may not have to spend a whole lot less. I don't care which way you do it, because after all, it's not my budget. But you're the one who can choose the mix of those 2 things. But that's the only 2 things that will fix it. Okay, the lottery's not going to do it for you. All right? And praying isn't going to put a bunch of money all of a sudden in your mailbox. Okay? What you're going to do is you're going to have to make the effort to change your spending habits and make more money. Now, from the make more money point of view, you may think about what opportunities there are already in the career that you're in or the job that you're at. You may be able to move up in your company, and that may provide you with an extra, X number of $1 or whatever more, whatever it is per hour. Okay? Seek and find out what opportunities there are where you already are, if you like where you are. Or this may be the perfect opportunity because you already don't like where you are anyway to start thinking about working somewhere else. Because after all, there's no saying anywhere that requires you to stay where you are. It's easy to stay where you are. It's the path of least resistance. Okay? But after all, the reason you're sitting here is because you've gotten at least somewhat to the point, maybe extremely to the point where you've had enough of the struggle with the finances, which means that you should be willing to do whatever it is you need to do. Okay? So, income. All right, so you can look within the job that you're at, look at the career that you're in, because part of the problem, I'm not saying it's you, but I mean, a lot of people that come into these problems, especially when they get to be into their 30s and 40s, is because they got a career or some sort of job going on when they were in their 20s, and it paid more than enough for them as a single 20-year-old or 25-year-old, but it wasn't going to work now as an adult with a family, etc. And they never really thought that far ahead because they were in their 20s, and we generally don't think that far ahead. Mostly because we don't have classes that we're required to take that teach us that we need to think ahead. Because life is going to happen, and at some point you're going to be 30, and then 40, and you might get married, and you might have kids, and you might have all these other things going on. And you might not be able to just turn to mommy and daddy when you fall short. And by the way, the ministry is not a replacement for mommy and dad. Although sometimes people act like that, and they come in, every time they fall short, they come and ask me. But you need to own this for yourself and start thinking about what you need for going ahead. So you might need to get a second job. Look, one of the bigger name financial guys out there, likes to say, if you're willing to live like, in a way that other people are not willing to live, then someday you'll get to live like they don't get to live. In other words, if you can really put your pleasure and your lifestyle on hold for a little while to work more and get it fixed and get it put aside, you may be able to really live a higher lifestyle later. Because you'll have eliminated the challenges, the debt, the things that just eat all of your funding. Some of you have not been on a vacation in a long time. I'm not just talking about the people in this room, whoever's watching this, right? I mean, sure, you get to go to feasts if you do your second tithe, but some of you haven't made enough money and had your budget worked out so you could even do that. Some of you would love to make enough money so you could just tithe correctly. Or get your budget right just so you could tithe correctly, because you feel the guilt and the stress of not doing that. Well, then you're going to have to fix the financial problem. That's a spending problem and an income problem, okay? So option one, look what you can do within the context of where you already work. Okay, are there any upward mobility options? Are there any ways for you to pick up overtime or any hours on a consistent basis, not short term, because after all, you're looking for a long-term fix. Now, if you can do it short term, that's great. Pay off some of the debt and get yourself into a better place, wonderful, but that's still not the real fix. You still need to be looking at a more permanent fix. That doesn't mean that a short-term fix should not be taken. Take the short-term fix if you can, if it's readily available, while you're still working on the longer-term fix. Okay. Next option, income-wise. It's very popular to call it today a side hustle. I don't like the word hustle because it sounds like somebody's taking advantage of somebody. But having a side business, as they would call it. Okay? Now bear in mind, this is a trap if you are not counseled. Because you'll find something you think is going to be like the lottery. You're going to do very little, make lots of money, and the next thing you know, you're putting all of your time, mind, energy, and heart towards it, and you're wasting all that time and energy towards it, and you're getting nowhere. If you're going to do, and I'm a big fan of entrepreneurialism and working for yourself, having a side thing going on, that side thing must, A, not mess your budget up, which is already strained, and B, never look at it as a full income until it actually is one. Don't keep, because you're counting, and this happens a lot, people count their chickens, so to speak, before they're hatched. They're like, oh my gosh, if I do this, and I do that, and this person sold me that, I could be making $10,000 a month. Someday, maybe, not next month, not this month. These things don't happen overnight. Okay? There are no get-rich-quick schemes that actually work, all right? Except for the people selling the schemes. This is one of those slow and steady wins the race. You're going to have to really but put massive action to it. You can speed it up a little bit, okay, because you put a lot of effort and action into it. Yahweh says 6 days are available for you to work. He doesn't actually say you must work 6 days. He says 6 days are set aside for working, 1 day not. So in 6 days you shall do all your labor. If you can get it all done in 5, great. You get it all done in 4. A lot of jobs are working 4-day weeks now, 10-hour days. Great. If you happen to get a job that gives you a 3-day or 4-day week, don't take off the other day or 2. Work. I love that people tell me, well, I got a 4-day work week. I'm like, great, what are you doing with the other 2? Oh, but I already work 10 hours a day. I said, so what? That's like a half a day for me. Come on. 10-hour days. I started today at 10, and I had only a 30-minute break in the middle somewhere, okay? It is what it is. You work. And so there has to be balance in your life. But you know what? If you work hard up front, get the things in line, then you'll have a lot more time later for all of those things. It just depends on how well you plan it out. Think about how much money, if you have debt, and almost all of you do, how much money are you throwing into that debt that if it was paid off would now be available to fix all the other budget things and get you where you need to go? I mean, I remember when I was, massively in debt, how much I paid every month just in interest charges. And I said, this is insane. Now, I don't mean it was insane and do what most people do, blame the bank. The bank didn't make me take out a credit card. The bank didn't make me use the credit card. If you're using your credit card to bridge gaps and cover, then you're already in a bad budgeting place, okay? I use, and this is just because of where I'm now at, I use the American Express. I use it for everything, and I pay it off every month, okay? And I get miles because of it, and I get tracking that way, and it's just convenient for me. But I do it knowing exactly that I'm going to pay it in full every month. So I have to know what I'm spending. Some of you got so used to using plastic that you should probably switch to paper, to cash, because cash hurts more. I carry cash, and every time I have to pull it out and actually use it, it hurts. Way different than if I pull out the plastic and use it. That's by intent, by the way. All right? And by the way, I know I probably mentioned this already, but just to understand that your credit card is like taking out an instant loan. You are not buying anything with a credit card. You are borrowing money with a credit card. People say, oh, you can spend money with your credit card. No, you can't spend. You don't spend with a credit card. You spend with your debit card because there's money in the bank that you're taking out. Your credit card is a loan. Imagine if every time you went to use it, you had to take out your pen and fill out papers for that $25 purchase you were about to make. You'd probably say, no, I'm not taking out a loan to buy this cup of coffee or this, whatever it is that you're buying, toiletries or paper goods or whatever it is at the store or clothing. No, I'm not going to take out a loan, but that's what you do. Unless, of course, you're treating it like a debit card and that you pay it off every month. Okay? And so just be aware that otherwise change your mindset. This is an instant loan that you're taking out. And you have a limit on how much you can borrow in that loan on your card. Okay? Okay, so you look at your job, you look at what you're doing, you look for maybe opportunities to go into different jobs. So what do you do about as far as looking at opportunities to go to different jobs? You need to do a skills assessment. Let me tell you how I recommend you do this skills assessment. Think about everything that you've ever done. Some of you have had lots of jobs or several jobs, or whatever kind of amount of jobs you've had. Even things you've done in group settings and organizational settings of any sort, volunteer work, doesn't matter. And think about all of the things you did, and not just the specific things, but the skills you needed to have to do them. Well, I was the receptionist. Okay, so did you have to have people skills? Yes. Did you have to have patience? Yes. Did you have to be able to handle adverse conversations? Yes. See, a lot of things more than I just answered the phone. All right? So I want you to think about that. Let me take somebody like Steve. He's a contractor, okay? But he has to still have people skills. He's got to interact with the customer. He's got to get the customer to want to pay him, to hire him to do the job that he's doing. And he's got to have discipline to actually do the work. and do it accurately and all this kind of, I mean, these are all skills other than just, well, I redo bathrooms or I redo kitchens. See, that doesn't say enough for you to understand all the different skills you needed to do to redo a bathroom or a kitchen. Because you had to talk to the customer, you had to convince the customer, you had to, using sales skills, right? You had to sell yourself that, hey, I can do your job, I can do a great job at a good price. See, think of all the things you did, and then think about all the things that you did that you liked doing. What did you like? Well, I liked interacting with the people. Or maybe you don't like interacting with people. Think of what you don't like too. By the way, sometimes that's even more important than what you do like. And then start making a list of these things and say, you know what jobs allow me to work with people or not work with people, or do this or not do that, and then kind of compile it all together. And then you may say, wow, I bet you this kind of a job kind of fits that. And if you can't think of that, then go find a list of professions. Used to be great when I was younger. We'd take the help wanted section out of the newspaper in New York, where like every possible profession was listed. I started the A's and I just kept going through them all, going, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder if that would be fun. I wonder if I would enjoy that. I wonder if that would pay me enough. Because if you're thinking about all your skill sets and your preferences, and you look at, oh, it says accountant. Wow, I don't really like talking to people anyway. Maybe that might be good because I'm going to be by myself more. I'm not going to interact with people as much or whatever. Or maybe you see accountant and you go, well, I wouldn't be good at all. I like to be with people. I don't like to be by myself. You know what I'm saying? So you go through from A's all the way to Z. There are also lots of books out there that you can get, like, so many days to the job you love or so many whatever, and they help you to identify, your preferences and your skill sets. Here's the important thing though. Don't do this like a year from now. Do this like this week. You're going to need to, if you want to attack this, put in what? Massive action, right? So you're going to need to work on those two major things. Figure out how you can spend less. What kind of things can you do to kind of gather yourself in your emotions to kind of rein in your spending? Some of you are thinking, I already spend almost nothing. Well, then your other side of it is what you're going to have to work on, the income side. Some of you may actually be very good and disciplined with your spending. Fine, go make more money. Okay? And what I don't want to hear, and this is for everybody who's watching this, okay? Because I've got a Rabbi Tom who's my friend, who's got every possible health thing wrong with him, is most of the time in a wheelchair, okay, doesn't walk around very much, 76 years old, and you know what? He works. If he can get a job and be willing to work, so can you. So I got all these people telling me, but I'm on government disability. Well, how disabled are you? He's very disabled. And he's on government disability, and yet he found a way to work. Okay? Now here's the other trap. But if I make too much money, they'll take away my disability. Are you kidding me? Are you really going to stay broke and be miserable because you want to protect the totally inadequate money the government gives you? But it's free money. No, it's not. It comes with a very high price. You being broke and miserable. That's an incredibly high price. Don't protect that $700 a month they give you when you could be making $1,500. You double your whole budget. Okay? I mean, look, a $10 an hour job, okay? A $10 an hour job, that's $400 a week. That's $1,600 a month, is way better than any $700 disability check. Even after taxes. Okay? Because even after taxes, it's still going to be close to double what you were making before. And so, don't let those things distract you, because people, well, you know what? Don't be the spider monkey. Now, I don't know if this is true, but some of you have heard the legend, okay? You know how they would catch, this is the legend of how they catch spider monkeys. They take a tree stump or a gourd, and they put a hole in it just big enough for a piece of fruit to go through. They stick that fruit in the hole, spider monkey sticks his hand in the hole, grabs the fruit, but it won't fit the hand and the fruit through the hole. And then they walk right over and put a little collar on it and everything, because it will not go anywhere because it's not going to let go of the fruit. To escape, all it would have to do is let go of the fruit. But it won't. Don't be like a spider monkey. Don't be holding so tight to your disability check that you're going to be broke and miserable your whole life because you won't go out there and get a job. By the way, if you have disability, they allow you to make quite a bit of money and still get your disability. If you don't know that, you need to find out. But you can make a very reasonable amount of money on top of your disability and not lose your disability. Okay? Or whatever, Social Security benefit that you have. And so if you're not adding to your income, well, don't look to anybody for benevolence. Look yourself in the mirror first and find out, why am I not doing something? Oh, but I can't walk. Ever go to Walmart and see somebody in a wheelchair as a greeter? They can't walk either. Anybody have a job where they sit all day? You don't need to walk to sit at a job where you sit all day. Well, I can't do this. There are a lot of jobs that don't need you to do whatever this is. Well, I don't know what I can do. There are places like Goodwill. There are a lot of people probably watching this that do have disability issues. Goodwill, you know what Goodwill is? It's not just a place where you go to get used clothing. They do it for a reason. It's a charitable organization that is used to take people with disabilities and train them and place them in jobs. And so if your town has any Goodwills, then one of those Goodwills has an office that you can go to where you can talk about how they can find you a job. They place a lot of the greeters at Walmart. I know, because I have a nephew that I went to try to get a job doing those things. And we went through Goodwill, and that's the kind of jobs that they had. And they train you, and they'll sit with you and make sure you can do the job, and whatever your handicap is. You have to be very, very extremely handicapped not to be able to find somebody somewhere that could give you some sort of job. And so don't allow the excuses, all right? Rather than say, I can't, ask the question, I wonder if anybody else with the same situation I have is doing something better than this. And if the answer is yes, then if they can do it, you can do it. Just keep telling yourself, they can do it, I can do it. That's why I use the Rabbi Tom example, and he doesn't mind because he's an inspiration. Okay? I watched him when he was actually bad enough where he really almost couldn't do anything. And you know what he did? He worked himself into shape. He quit smoking, lost 145 pounds. He now goes to the gym, and he does the gym work sitting. He does things that he can do and be in his chair. But he does. He works out. A lot of you are quite functional and still don't go to the gym and don't work out. Guilty. I keep expecting my $10 a month membership to do something for me, and it's not working. Because I don't go. If I went, guess what would happen? It would work. But you have to go, right? Okay, so any questions or comments on this up to this point? Okay, this is not, brain surgery. This is not rocket science. This is very simple, straightforward stuff. Yes? Okay, so Sarah Beth is saying you can't hear her, but she's saying that where she works is a quote-unquote, your standard, as you picture, little old lady. People like looking at her, it looks almost painful to see her, but she works 12-hour shifts. She gets things done. She can barely walk, and she does what she has to do. Look, I can tell you from a ministerial point of view, when we used to provide all of our own meals and everything at the feast, when we had a property where we got to cook for ourselves and everything else, we had a lady show up who managed to get around barely with a walker. She had a walker. And she was unstoppable to try to find some way to help. She would lean on the walker and serve food to people. She would lean on whatever she had to do to maybe wash a few dishes or something. She wanted to do. It's the old, very simple saying, where there's a will, there's a way. I talked about this a while back in one of the either Rosh Chodeshes or some other time that we were talking. I talked about the fact that this is going to take, to be successful, not just finance, but life itself takes a strong mind and takes a lot of heart. The hard part means there's no quit in you. There should be no quit. Okay? And the strong mind means I will find a way. If anybody else can do it, I can do it. You ever watch a kid when they first start to walk? They fall down and they get up and they fall down and they get up and they fall down. Then you get to be 50 and 60, you fall down, you go, oh, forget it, I'm not trying that again. It's a good thing you don't learn to walk when you're 50, you learn to walk when you're like 2. Or 1, okay? Because that way you're 1 year old, you don't know that falling down is a problem. Of course, you're a lot closer to the ground at that point. Okay? But they get up, they start again. They get up, they start again. They get up, they start again. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to look at the spending and I'm going to give you one more thing after this, and then we'll start to wrap it up from there. So you can look at your spending, figure out where you can, get more efficient or more effective with your spending. You're going to look at what you can do to make more money. As far as side jobs, side issues, think about anything that you're skilled at that you can make money doing on the side. Maybe you play an instrument and you can give lessons. Maybe you do something like artistic and you can give anything that you can give lessons, just private lessons. Think about all the kinds of things that people get private lessons with. And maybe you have a skill that's worth that. Maybe you can just find a part-time job doing anything. And by the way, if your budget is only short a little bit of money, any minimum wage or anywhere between minimum and $10 an hour job that's out there, like a Walmart or anywhere, or a fast food place, that may be what your budget needs. I mean, that certainly could be the stopgap, and it's not something that's going to require, a huge amount of skill sets and things that anybody here couldn't do, okay? And I don't want to minimize those things. You got to get your pride and your ego out of the way. At some point, you got to get to where you have had enough not having enough, okay? And when you've had enough not having enough, you'll figure it out. You'll get it done, all right? You will. I remember working with my son. He loved the Lego kits. You'd buy the whole kit. Everything you needed was in that kit to build the thing, whatever it was. I'd give him the kit. He'd open it up. And then at some point fairly early on, he'd go, "Daddy, I need some help. I'll be right there." And I wouldn't go. Wouldn't you know, he finished it and figured it out. He wanted it done. He just hit a slight roadblock for half a second, not understanding something, and the first thought is to give up or quit or get somebody else to do it for you. Instead of saying, no. Now, after a few of these, I looked at him the next time, and the next time I said, "Remember last time how I didn't come and help you, but you figured it out? You can do it." Now, I didn't say, "Well, go figure it out." I said, "You see, you learned, you proved it, you can do this. I know you want my help because it'd be easier, you think, but you can do this. All of you can do this." All right? Okay? So you just got to figure out things that you can do. By the way, there's another piece of this that I didn't mention. You may have things that you have cluttering up that you can sell. Unclutter, get rid of a bunch of stuff. And you may not have a bunch of stuff to sell, but you might. Sell it, get rid of it. Okay? If you can sell it, you should sell it. Why do you hold on? You hold on to all kinds of junk. And we do it for really crazy reasons. Okay, I had a family member I remember talking about, had all these toys that the child had played with. "What are you saving them for? The child is now 15, not 3. "Oh, well, I'm saving it so she can give them to her kids. She's going to get brand new stuff for her kids. And her kids aren't necessarily going to want the stuff that she wanted when she was 3. It's all different stuff. The stuff I played with, my kids would never play with. None of it has batteries or plugs in. There's no screen. I actually had to play with stuff and make stuff up myself. The thing I had didn't do anything on its own. I didn't even have the ones with the pull string that could say something. But we didn't have, the kids today won't play with. But we save stuff, we clutter ourselves up. Unclutter yourself. Sell some of it, throw the rest of it out. Clean some house, get a fresh start, you'll feel better. Okay? All right. So now let's talk about your budget. Okay, so going forward, we're going to start to use this budget. So what is a budget? A budget is a way to see how your income and expenses relate and where you can plan and pre-spend your money. Okay, a budget is pre-spending of money. If you ever worked in an organization and the organization had a budget, or departments that have a budget, they're told you have X number of dollars to pre-spend on whatever you need to do. You need to allocate that money. This is the money you have. Well, then guess what? You know what you make in a week or what you make in a month. Now you need to allocate that money. This much is towards rent, this much is towards electric, this much is towards my phone, this much is towards food. Okay, that's the whole point of the budget. Pre-spend your money. Now, some of you lack discipline. Now, for people that lack discipline, there's been very successfully used what's called the envelope system. And you can certainly do that. You get a bunch of envelopes and you put labels on them. This is for food, this is for rent, this is for this. And you actually take the money as it comes in, turn it into cash and stick it in the envelopes, and that's the envelope you use for that thing. You do not use the rent envelope to buy food. You don't use the food envelope to buy clothes. You understand what I'm saying? And when you go to pull out the food envelope and it's halfway through the month and you realize it's getting really low, you may make different food decisions. You'll start to learn to use the money that you have, because that's the envelope for that month. Now, it won't work perfectly at the beginning because you won't know what you're doing with it, and you'll go and spend way too much at the beginning and not leave yourself enough. But if you get that experience enough to be frustrated, realizing, I messed it up, you'll start to figure it out. Okay? And don't think just making more money fixes it, because if you make more money and don't fix this part of the problem, you'll just spend more anyway. Okay? What you think of as rich people are just broke at a higher tax bracket. They just have bigger cars with bigger car payments, or they have bigger houses with bigger house payments, or they just have bigger payments, a lot of them. Okay? So they show up in style to their bankruptcy. Okay? I mean, but they still have the same challenge you do, mostly because they've not learned this part of it, how to budget their money. Now, the really wealthy, I didn't say the rich, now I said the wealthy. The wealthy don't spend money on dumb things. The rich do. The rich spend on all kinds of dumb things. But wealthy are smart people. That's how they got to be wealthy. They don't buy things they don't need. They don't buy anything new if they can avoid it. They only buy things when they're on sale, whatever. They actually are wise with their money. They don't buy stuff that they just on a whim thought they wanted, but they don't actually have a need for, etc. Okay? A lot of the wealthy don't drive the most expensive, fanciest, cars. And if they did, they don't buy it brand new. They save half the price and buy something that's 2 years old. And you think, but they're so wealthy. How do you think they got there? Okay? And so, just remember there's a difference. Wealth is wisdom with money. And I want you to be wealthy. Wealthy also means that you have all the money you need to do all the things that you need to do, and you also have the time to enjoy it. Because you've got enough so that you don't have to work 2, 3, 4 jobs, whatever. You don't have to do all these things. But you're now at a point where you can live comfortably on what you make, and you have all that you need. That's wealth. Your financial life without struggle. Wouldn't that be nice, to have a financial life and not be a struggle? Okay? If you have to look at the price on something, not to figure out whether it's a good deal, but to figure out whether or not you can even afford to buy it, you've got a finance problem. Okay? Because you shouldn't have picked it up unless it was something you actually needed and wasn't just a waste of money. Okay? But if the price affects whether or not you buy it, not whether or not you buy that one and you want to go buy it cheaper somewhere else, but whether you even buy it at all, that's a finance problem. And you can fix that. Okay? If everybody decided, hey, you know what? We all like to go out after class and we're going to go to the diner and have a meal, and you're thinking, yeah, but I can't afford that. But man, I'd love to go. Not every day, but maybe once a month be able to join in. These are things you can fix with what? Fixing your spending, fixing your income. So let's look at your budget. So in your budget, you're going to take how much you make in a month, whatever number of dollars it is, and you're going to start putting it in those boxes and spend every penny of it. Okay? If you have more than you need for the boxes, then that's going to go into some sort of fund for savings or your emergency fund or something like that. Okay? Excess money should at first go into that $1,000 emergency fund. So pre-spend the money. By the way, this is a finance class, but I'm going to throw you something that has nothing to do with finance. You should do the same thing with your time. We waste an incredible amount of time because we actually have no idea what we want to do. So we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what to do next. I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. But what if you already scheduled your time? Oh, but that would seem so rigid. There's a lot of freedom, actually, in knowing what you're going to do next. You could always change your mind and exchange that time for something else and switch it. But at least you kind of budgeted your time. And you put in time with the Father, right? Your spiritual time, your family time, your work time. Budget these things in. Sleep. Make sure you're getting that. Whatever time that you need. Time with your husband, time with your wife, whatever. Time with your children. If you schedule it, it'll happen. Okay? So budgets work with time as well as with money. Well, I just don't seem to have enough time to do that, because you're not budgeting your time. And so, of course, you don't end up with enough time to do anything, because you wasted a whole bunch of it, trying to figure out what to do, or just doing nothing because you didn't know what to do. But if you actually pre-spend the time, we call that in sales, we call it time blocking. In sales and management, we call it time blocking. You just block out blocks of time to do all the different things that you need to do. And if ever you need to do something different in a block, you just exchange that out. Now, that's the same thing with your financial budget. If you need money for something, you better make sure that you have a way to exchange that out of something else and be willing to lose somewhere else to exchange it out. You can't just spend more money. It's got to come from somewhere. Okay? So maybe you were putting aside money for clothing. You didn't have an emergency need for it, but you know that whenever you do buy clothing, it costs X number of dollars because you go at one time, you buy a few outfits, whatever it is. And maybe something happens where you need some money for something else because you realize that's not budgeted. Sure, you could take some of the money out of the clothing budget, knowing it just means you'll have to keep what you have a little longer. Okay? But you have to know that it's a trade-off. If you decide you need to spend more in one place, it has to come from someplace else. Okay? What we tend to do is just pull out the credit card and just spend more money. I'm sorry, I used the word spend in credit card. Borrow more money. Okay? And then we owe more money, and then we really create ourselves a vicious cycle. All right? So, where does that leave us? Again, if you have not done it yet, you need to create your 3-month ledger, get an idea of what you have been spending. Go back and look at bank statements and everything like we talked about last time. You also should be using a ledger daily going forward. Every day, whatever you spend, put it down on the budget, not on the budget, on the ledger. And by the way, that may also help you edit what you're doing because you're actually having to write it down. So as you're spending, you go, wait a minute, I got to write that down. Am I going to want to look at that later and realize that's what I bought? What? Okay? But write it down. Track every penny that you spend from when we started to going forward. If you didn't start, do it from today going forward. Every penny that you spend, write it down. Keep track of it. All right? And then look at your budget sheets that I gave you, or create your own new ones. And if you need the file, now for those of you that are watching, I know I said you can email me to get the file. That was for these guys. We will put this on the website, and the file will be downloadable, and the forms will be downloadable, etc., on the website. Okay? So as a clarification, I'm going to say that because you guys could email me, and some of you did, and we got you. Did you get that from the files that we need? Okay. All right. So don't email me if you watch class 1 and I said email me. That's not going to work. If all of a sudden thousands of people are watching this and they start emailing me, that's going to be tough. We will put it on the website, okay, where we'll have under resources or something, there'll be classes or education, and one of them will be the finance class, and you'll be able to watch the videos, and you'll be able to download the forms, and you'll have access to the spreadsheet that was interactive. Any questions on any of this so far? Okay, Shannon? Okay, so on the bottom of the spreadsheet for the budget, there was a line that says accumulated balance. So that means that if you take your balance, which is the line right above that, okay? Okay, so where it says accumulated balance. All right, so when you look at your monthly balance, that tells you that month how much plus or minus you were that month, okay? So if you're looking at your sheet, okay, so you have for February, let's say your monthly balance was plus $50. Okay, you were ahead by $50. And so your cumulative balance at that point is $50. Then we go to March. Let's say March also was $50. So then you're going to add $50 to the cumulative balance from February. And so now your cumulative balance is $100. Now let's say we go to April and you are at a minus $50. And so now we're going to take that $50, take the previous cumulative balance of $100 and minus it out. Now you've got back to $50. So it's your running total of what you have as a balance, okay? So that at the end of the year, you know if you're ahead $50 a month, at the end of the year, you're going to be ahead $600, okay? And so it's a way for you to get a sense of where you're at in your balance. So some months you may have a negative, some months you may have a positive, and then you'll see overall, where are you? And so that's what the cumulative balance is, okay? And so it's the previous month's cumulative balance plus that month's current balance added together. All right? Yes. Well, there can be an accumulative balance if you have not, if for example, that would be the excess that you then could then put and add a line now. If you start seeing that a lot of it's going to be your negative balances, then you're going to be seeing that you have a problem. But really it's not, okay, how do I explain this? It's not for actual budgeting. It's for your planning forward and seeing how things affect. Okay, if I do this, where does it put my balance? And if I did that over a year, and then if you see, wow, if I did it over a year, I'd have an extra $200 or $500. Wow, I can now create a line for that called emergency fund, where I'm now adding that money every month to the emergency fund, and now I'm back to zero. Okay, so the question was, I thought you said we're supposed to spend all the money. Yes, but when you're using a spreadsheet, the spreadsheet's designed mostly for one thing: what if? That's what spreadsheets are for. What if I spent less here, made more money there, added this? What if? How does that affect things? So when you change one number, it changes the whole thing. All right, so as you're planning ahead for the year, and you go, if I keep making what I'm making, so you're not just looking at February, because if you look at the spreadsheet I gave you on Excel, anything that you put in February automatically went through the whole year. Because I had the rest of the year, basically whatever you put in the first month gets duplicated all the way across. Okay? Yours didn't do that? That's because you messed it up somehow. Okay. All right? And that's only the one where I put in all of the, in the one it says, in the spreadsheet, there were 4 different sheets. The one that says calculable or whatever calculated, that one automatically calculates. Okay. All right? The other one that said that was a blank sample doesn't. All right? So you have the one that calculates. There were 4 different sheets there. All right. But see, now what that's going to do is you say, okay, what if I got an increase and a raise at this point, and so my income would go up a little bit, and then all of a sudden, wow, I realize I've got a balance of plus $50 or $25. Wow, and if that accumulated up to a certain point, that'd be great. By the way, having a little extra may be there for all the miscellaneous things that you didn't think of, and that's okay to have it that way. You're going to try to pre-spend all the money. So I don't mind you having a little bit of a balance in the positive every month. But if you see a consistent balance as positive, that should be going into the creation of step number 3, which is the emergency fund. Okay? All that money should just be being put into that emergency fund. All right? Okay. Because remember, in the beginning, you're not going to be as accurate as you will later on. It's going to take you a while to realize there are things that are missing out of your budget that you're spending that you forgot to put in. There are things that you put in that maybe you're not spending as much on or you're really not doing anymore, so you'll make adjustments. All right? And then it should be able to tell you where you're at. Okay? So for example, if your goal is to have $1,000 in your emergency fund by the end of the year, okay, you can now put numbers in and see if that cumulative balance will be $1,000, then that means that you figured out how to make it work. Then you can now make a line for emergency fund and move that amount that you would every month into that, and now you'll be back to zero. But first you needed to see, how do I get the 1,000 by the end of the year? Does that make sense now? Kind of, okay. Maybe next time I'll bring the laptop and I'll put it up on the screen so you could see. Okay? Okay, that'll be easier. All right, so, because right now we're at the beginning of this process, and you want to know, as I make decisions, how will that affect things going out the whole rest of the year? And if I know that I need $1,000 in my emergency fund, I'd like to have it by September, well then I got to figure out how do I have an extra accumulated balance by September of $1,000. And so you make all the adjustments that you need to make till it gets there, and then you can start taking out so many dollars per month, putting it in your emergency fund so you still have that zero balance. Does it make sense for everybody? Okay? All right. That's the way that the spreadsheet works. All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Jana? Okay, so she's asking at the bottom of the first section of expenses, there's a double line, under the double line, that's your total for the month of expenses. Right. Well, first you're going to have the monthly balance. Okay, so basically, why don't we answer this question next week when I actually put it on the screen? It'll be easier. Okay, because basically what we're trying to do is this. On the spreadsheet, you have first all of your expenses, then you have all of your income. Then when you get to monthly balance, that is already going to calculate your income total minus your expense total. But it should automatically calculate those two things. all right? And then once it does that, it will give you, in the first month, your monthly balance and your cumulative balance will be the same. And then in month 2, it's going to take your new monthly balance, and it's going to add or subtract it from your cumulative balance if it was a positive or negative. If it's positive, it'll add it to it. If it's negative, it'll subtract it from it, okay? And so we'll have that work. Any other comments or questions so far? Craig? Okay, if you're thinking, the question, I guess I'll have to just repeat question, it makes it easier. So the question is, at what point, if you're thinking of doing a side business, or you're running some sort of self-employed type of thing, or entrepreneurial thing, should you get counsel? Step 1, stage 1, as soon as you have an idea, and as soon as you're seriously considering it, let's not just say an idea popped in your head, but you're actually seriously thinking, hey, I might be able to do this could make me some extra money, or it could be a full-time living at some point, and then you might want to get some counsel. And I have started many businesses. I've been successful, in understanding how to start businesses. And so I can certainly give counsel in that. So, Craig, we could do that at any time, okay? But the answer to the question is, look, when you first have an idea pop in your head, well, you need to do some research, make sure, find out, how much of a need there is for your business in the area you live in, what the likelihood of success is, and those kind of things. Or just come to me and counsel, and I can give you the questions you should be asking. Because the first thing I want to make sure is that you ask all the right questions in terms of evaluating the viability of your idea, okay? And the viability a lot has to do with where you're located. Is there already a huge market for it that's being underserved? Hey, that'd be great. Is there a very small market that's already flooded? That wouldn't be so great, okay? And so you have to then figure out, because I've had some people have some great ideas not to realize, look, I watched some people in the gym. I used to work in a gym, I managed a gym, and then I was a personal trainer in the gym, and I watched other personal trainers before I started doing the personal training. I said, that looks great, they get paid a lot per hour, and they get to have fun, and they're training people in the gym, only to find out, which I didn't know, because I didn't ask anybody any questions, that everybody wants to train during the same 4 hours. They want to train during the 2 hours in the morning, like right after they would drop the kids off at school, and the time that's right after they get off of work. Nobody wanted to train in the middle of the day. And you can't make enough money on 4 clients, okay? It's very hard to fill your day. You think, I could just fill the whole day. No, because almost nobody wants those other hours during the day. No, I didn't know that. I mean, it's not that you can't find people for that, but it's not as easy, okay? Okay, the ladies especially, they wanted to drop the kids off at school and come and get trained. Okay, anybody, ladies, guys, whatever, who wanted to get trained, a lot of times it was they wanted at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, they wanted to get right home from work and just show up right at the gym, train, and go eat and go whatever they need to do. There's only these windows. Now, I didn't know that because I didn't ask anybody. So I learned a lesson. You know what, whatever you want to do, why not ask somebody that does it and find out what you don't know? What am I missing? What am I not seeing? Because it looks like this to me. And the guy starts laughing at me going, yeah, it doesn't work that way. It looked like that to you, but that's not the way it works, okay? And so, but here's the hard part. Now, I'm not saying Craig is doing this or anybody else is doing this, when they do not ever fall in love with your idea, okay? Believe in your idea. Get information, but if you fall in love with it, now you have an emotional attachment and you will not receive any kinds of criticism that lets you know that it may not work the way you think it does. I want you to fall in love with your business once it's working. I want you to believe in your idea if you give it a shot. I don't want you to fall in love and get emotionally blinded because you don't want to now listen to somebody that actually knows what they're talking about something you've never done, okay? You want to be a plumber, and you think that that's all great? Maybe it is great. Go talk to a plumber. Make sure that you find out the real thing about being a plumber. Okay? You want to be a teacher? Find out what it's really like to be a teacher. I guess teacher would be more of an employment job. But I mean, let's say you want to do tutoring or private lessons or some of the, find out the things that are the downfalls that you may not be seeing and be willing to receive and listen to that information. Okay? We'll probably do a class, I'll add it to my list here. One of the steps, we'll probably do a separate class on small business, starting a business, entrepreneurial, and then we can do that as like a class as part of the idea of dealing with finance. So Craig, that could probably be a good class, to address some of the things you're asking about. Because I think we do have quite a few people in the congregation and that will be watching that have thought, well, what if I started my own business? What's that all about? I've started a lot of businesses. I can give you a little bit. I've started businesses that work out of the house. I've started businesses that were brick and mortar. In other words, they had a building that people came to. All right? I've done consulting businesses. I've done every kind of, well, not every kind, lots of different flavors of business. Okay? And I own a lot of t-shirts, a lot of mistakes that I made, and a lot of lessons that were learned, and a lot of successes I had to understand why they were successful and why they weren't, so we can give some counsel for that. All right? Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, so we'll call this class a little bit shorter. We'll go ahead and end it here, and then we can see what I could do to maybe take Jana's laptop over here, and I can show you what that actually looks like, and you can see what we're talking about as well. All right, see you at the next class. Take massive action.